You are listening to Seniors Junction podcast. We're working to eliminate seniors isolation, one conversation at a time. Your hosts today, Namrata Bagaria, and myself, Paul Merkley, co-founders of Seniors Junction. Our special guest today, Charlene Nadalin, founder of Intro. Welcome, Charlene.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Absolutely, it'd be my pleasure. I am the founder of Intro. It is a social platform and information hub, free to users. Our members are 50 plus. The platform is a friendship networking platform that was designed exclusively as a solution to social isolation and loneliness, that's focused on fostering friendship, shared experiences, and knowledge. And I come from corporate PR and marketing and communications. I built a very successful career in that space. And then around 2012, I started getting a little bit of itchy feet, but more than anything was getting a bit more concerned about my mom and her quality of life and her not so much the quality of her circle of friends, but the fact that it was getting smaller for a number of reasons. People were, downsizing, moving closer to their adult children, becoming, caregivers to maybe their spouse, and therefore they didn't have the luxury of additional time to socialize and so on and so forth. And so I started researching and picking my brain and trying to figure out what I could do for my mom and what I could do for my brother and myself. I've got a brother that's 3 years younger than I, who is raising a young family himself, and was also worried and concerned and feeling anxiety and sometimes guilt for not being able to spend as much time as we would both love to with my mom. And so I started researching solutions, knowing my mom's character and knowing her personality and knowing what she likes and doesn't like, and discovered that we were not in a unique, isolated situation whatsoever, that there are millions upon millions of families just like mine that are feeling the same emotions and stresses. And then, it's not just the isolation. I mean, we all understand social isolation. It's boredom, just plain boredom, and not knowing what to do or having people to do things with, and so on and so forth. And so I put my foot down and said, enough's enough. There's nothing out here for my mom. And so I was raised where, do something or shut up, quite frankly, do something about it or be quiet. That came from a very strong Italian father. And so I decided, rather than to shut up, I would do something about it. And that is how Intro came about.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
That's amazing. And Paul has quite an extensive experience of working and living in Italy, so I think he can relate to what you just said.
Oh,
his experience.
We'll have to have
that. And he speaks Italian too, I think.
Molto bene.
Which is why I had asked how to pronounce your name, because I would have said Nadaline if I hadn't said anything.
It actually is Nadalin, because it's a northern Italian. My dad was from just off of Venice.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm Friulan, like I'm half, and then the other half
You're
my
a
mom's
Friulan.
Australian.
You're a Friulan.
Yes.
One of my walking buddies is a Friulan. Oh, well, he'll be watching this podcast.
Awesome. And by the way, that's the first course we offer, is History of Renaissance Music, and there's a lot of Italian and French information in that. So because Paul is a world expert in Renaissance music, so that's where it comes from.
Oh, well, Paul, we'll have a talk offline, because I have a very talented musician cousin in my dad's hometown back in Italy, who studied, I believe, Renaissance and classical music, and is a spectacular musician.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we'll connect later.
Perfect.
Okay.
And this is This is the purpose of this podcast, is to make connections. And we just made one while filming this. Excellent. So, piggybacking on what you just talked about, researching solutions for your mom in isolation, and you mentioned a bit of boredom, because we've been interviewing a lot of guests and we've heard different facets of isolation, like loneliness, like boredom, like self-neglect, many kind of
Mhm.
facets. So according to you, from your research, what are the pain points of social isolation in this population?
There's there's so many. It presents in different formats. The pain points. Are you talking about the impact, or like, are you looking specifically for the impact that I'm seeing?
Or what is the other option? One is the impact, but also what did you, sometimes is the impact, which is obvious in your face, but there's sometimes discovery piece, which things you discovered, which is not in the literature, which you found,
Yeah. So I think that, social media is an oxymoron. It's an ironic term. There's nothing social. I shouldn't say social media. Pardon me. Social networks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Social networks. There's
Yeah.
nothing social about social networks. They have been around for decades now, and we don't have to name them. We know what they are. And in that time, social isolation of the aging population has grown exponentially. It is increasing. It is not decreasing. So they don't have the right formula for reducing social isolation. Quite frankly, they contribute to it. And so at Amintro, we're making sure that while we are using technology and we're using a cloud-based platform with companion apps, we are 100% number one focused on reducing social isolation. We are absolutely focused on, improving the lives of at least two people that have become friends. That's success for us. Obviously, we're using technology to reach a greater audience because the need is so great. And so I think that people might, there are online and technologies out there that are wonderful and they serve a purpose. Dating apps serve a purpose. These social networks absolutely serve a purpose, but they are not reducing social isolation whatsoever.
Yeah. I think just before your episode, we had interviewed Sarah Geber, and she talked a lot about social network. Having a network and having connection in that network are two separate things. And I think it's the reiteration of what we just heard. It's true. Like as it's like having different data points, but do you make sense of it? Do you interact with it? Do you speak, in terms of you can know 500 people on Facebook, but if you never message any of them or talk to them or meet them, like it's just numbers, like it's just like your roster of something which you never used, right? So
there's no what is the value of having 500 friends?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What is the value? Is it ego? Is it volume?
Mm-hmm.
We go back to quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
And what is quality? What contributes to quality of life?
Yeah.
It's not 500 friends that you engage with through a tablet or a laptop. That is not how I want to live my life. That is certainly not how I want to see my mom spending her time, nor is it how she wants to be spending her time, spending hours on a computer, as a replacement for socializing and friendship. Like that is not a replacement. It can be, if used properly, a funnel or a channel, but something has to happen beyond the computer. Something has to happen beyond the screen time. We're social creatures. We're social beings. I mean, my gosh, we're born, and we're probably, our first friends are probably our cousins, or potentially the neighborhood kids, or potentially your classmates when you start school. Like, I think, and it kind of happens naturally, because it's in our nature. We're social creatures, and I couldn't imagine life without friends. I couldn't possibly imagine life without friends. And to think about it hurts my heart. And now everybody understands it because of this pandemic and being forced to be separated from our loved ones, our parents and our friends and other members of the family. Now everybody understands what social isolation feels like. It is devastating. It is painful. It's unnatural. And so what we're seeing is a wave of empathy where they all get it. And I think when everybody gets it, you start to see more attention paid to areas where there are gaps and there are problems. More people are working at finding a solution because now they understand how it feels. And where they say, walk a mile in his shoes type thing. Well, the world has given us an opportunity to walk a mile in the shoes of many socially isolated seniors. And it's not fun.
Well said. That's well said. Yeah.
I appreciate what you're saying. We both do. Two-part question. One part, the standard question of what is your vision for working on it? And you've already, in large measure, answered that. But as you were speaking, I had the sense that you were touching on something that we call purpose, as you were discussing quality, because we see social connectedness as leading to a purposeful life. Are you thinking something like that? And is there something else you want to tell us about your vision for tackling this problem?
So, we're focused on friendship, good old-fashioned friendship. That is at the core, one of the core values of Amintro. I mean, our name means introduced friends. Ami is a prefix in Latin-based languages and words that have to do with friendship. Paul, Italian, amici, amicizia, amigos, I speak Spanish as well. So amistad is friendship, and ami in French, of course. They all start with AMI. So we took AMI and intro and brought it together for our company name, Amintro, and we introduced friends, and we are unapologetic about that, because I think that in life, friendship occurred as a byproduct of a stage of life, going to school, work, so on and so forth. It wasn't really a focus. And then we reached a certain age where the opportunities to interact with new faces and new people are less and less and less. And so the vision for Amintro is to be the playground, the schoolyard for grown-ups to actually meet new people, not existing people, not their friends that they already have on social networking, but others that they wouldn't likely have met, that have commonality but differences, because the differences are fascinating too, and important to the foundation of any sort of relationship, particularly friendship. The vision is to serve, beyond our borders. Like, Amintro is a North American platform. The problem is global. The goal is to, at the end of the day, provide a really safe, fun online environment that facilitates meeting new people at a local level. And that's key with Amintro. Even though we are a North American platform, and our members are in Canada and the United States, if you are in West Palm Beach, Florida, you're not getting introduced to somebody in Orlando, which is like an hour, 2.5 hours away. If you're in Toronto, you're not getting introduced to somebody in Quebec City, because that will not get you off the computer. you're never going to meet them in person. You're never going to go grab a coffee or a beer. So the objective with the Mintro is, yes, we are a technology based company. We're a social impact enterprise. We're using technology to reach a greater audience. But at the end of the day, we want them to log off and get out and enjoy their community and, you know, maybe travel when time is, you know, when we can, type thing. So one of the things with the Mintro is our members can meet and be introduced to people. We give friend suggestions, or they can do their own search from within, you know, a 10-kilometer radius to no more than a 100-kilometer radius. So while we have members across the country, if they're beyond 100 kilometers of where a member is located, you're not going to get introduced to them. Even if the algorithm says you two would make besties, it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't solve the problem. And so we have, I have a huge vision for a Mintro. I understand the problem because I'm living it, and my mom is living it, a little less because she's made some friends on the Mintro. And I've immersed myself in this world since 2012, doing research. I did research for years before we launched a Mintro. You know, 2018 is when we launched a Mintro. I had to educate myself. I had to understand how profound the problem is, what it looks like to an individual, and who else is impacted, who else is experiencing pain and suffering. It's the kids, it's the family members, it might be the neighbors, right? It might be the spouse of someone. And how do I sustain it? Because I've always believed, and I stand behind my decision as the founder and the CEO of a Mintro, that it is going to be free to our members. I don't believe that my mom should have to pay a fee through no fault of her own, that her circle of friends has dwindled and wants an opportunity to connect and meet new people locally. So we sustain that through corporate sponsors. So we work with companies and brands and organizations who run editorial programs with a Mintro. And the content that is created, whether it's their communications teams or a Mintro's team of writers, number one rule is it has to be a benefit to our readers, to our members. Like, I don't care if your company built a warehouse and is employing, 200 people. As a Mintronian, that has no bearing on my life. That's not going to improve my life. What will improve my life is perhaps there's a product or a service or a resource or a solution that I should be looking into that is going to inspire more active living or healthier living, or maybe challenge me to think outside the box. Or, gosh, I never thought that, I could consider, for example, riding down the Grand Canyon on a donkey as an adventure. Never thought I should even think to do something like that, but that intrigues me. So we're very much built on, and I said earlier, friendship, but knowledge as well. Because what I realized very early on was independence, and maintaining independence at any age, particularly our senior years, is also detrimental to the quality of life. My mom can make her own decisions, and so by providing access to that knowledge and that information, it enables her to say, I like that, or I disagree with that, or, you know what, I'm going to go talk to so-and-so about that because I think that's rather interesting, and off I go, type of thing. And so having come from the PR and marketing and communications world, when I sought to create this solution, I know the value of knowledge. I know the value of solid information. And so I realized that was how I would be able to maintain a free platform for, the 50 plus, the boomers and the seniors, and also find organizations that are like-minded that want to be a part of the solution. And so there we have it.
Thank you.
That's a beautiful answer.
Thank you.
It resonates a lot with what we've been learning and doing in different ways. some commonalities, some differences, but
Mm.
it's great. And I think coming
Yeah.
to it, uh, so typically I ask what were, your challenges and motivations in doing this, but I'm going to ask you this in, say, two ways. One is as a business, what were your challenges and what were the motivations? And one thing, the podcast before yours is Sarah's, and she talks about what are the challenges, like people find it challenging to make new friends, right? And you have a solution. So you must have observed there's certain hesitancies which are very common. You might have, when you interviewed, or maybe when you have customers, they tell you. So can you tell us what are the challenges for people to make new friends at that age or in that space? And then what are the motivations? So if you can answer this in two parts for me, that'll be helpful.
So I think that the challenges I think are very subjective. Like they're I don't think you can sort of have an umbrella sort of list of challenges per se, because it's personalities. It could be some people are more introverted, and you're not as gregarious or out that sort of thing. We know all the different personality types,
Yeah.
especially coming from, but I think it's just a big part of it is there is not there's not enough opportunities to meet new people. They don't know where, and I think the bigger sort of challenge is that, and I think this is wrong because I'll talk to anybody. And I have no problem saying, I think you're a really incredible person and I'm going to call you friend now and we're going to go for coffee. I've got no problems doing that.
Like us,
but,
too extrovert.
Yeah, right. But I don't think that, I think that people feel vulnerable, or maybe like there's a vulnerability in admitting that they're lonely, and there shouldn't be. Like, I think that's one of the bigger problems, is that there's an embarrassment perhaps felt, or shame associated with admitting that you're lonely or you'd like to make friends. Like, we don't go to people, like I said earlier, friendship has been a byproduct of life. We don't go out to say, today I'm going to go meet, I'm going to make 2 friends today. Like, we don't do that. We go out to shop, or to play a sport, or to take our kids to soccer practice, and you're stuck on the field with other parents that are sitting there staring at the kids playing ball, and you strike up a conversation, and what unifies you is the fact that you're stuck on the field watching your kids play soccer. So that is the commonality that is sort of the icebreaker, right? And a friendship can, and many times do, come from that soccer field being the icebreaker, and we don't really have icebreakers. And so I think that just our society in general, doesn't give us an environment where it celebrates friendship and celebrates the fact that strangers have the absolute opportunity to become friends. Like, the greatest irony to me is that we have millions upon millions upon millions of older adults at a global level, but even just just Canada alone, that are socially isolated or lonely, and at great risk of quite frankly, premature death, stroke, dementia as a result of this. So you've got millions of people, which means there's volume, and all these people combined are feeling lonely. Like, it's ironic, if you got that many people, in my mind, there shouldn't be loneliness, because there's plenty other people that are similar and in a similar situation, that would, that clearly, I don't think anyone's happy being socially isolated. Nobody chooses to be socially isolated. It occurs. And I think they just don't know where to go or what to do, or are comfortable admitting it, right? And I think that's wrong. I think you need to scream and yell and say, I'm bored. I'm lonely and I don't know what to do. I think the kids need to yell and say, you know, well, here are some ideas, mom or dad. A Mintro, whether you live in retirement living or you're at home or in a condo or an apartment, whatever the case may be, it is inclusive, it is and accessible and super simple to use, right? So use it. Get to know your neighbors in your own retirement community. Like you might have a loved one that's in retirement housing, and there's 400 potential friends, but they struggle to socialize with each other as well. I mean, I lived in residence at university, and there were people in other wings of the residence that I didn't really know. Until someone made an introduction and said, "Oh, Katie lives on my floor, you two would get along," that sort of thing. And so a Mintro to me is the house party. It's the playground. It's I always envision a Mintro as the host of a really massive house party or dinner party. And the host knows every single one of the guests that have been invited to the dinner and has the capacity to make connections and introductions, because the host knows what they have in common. I'll tell you a quick story if we have time. Just, I kind of chuckle sometimes at what I do now, because I think it's always been in who I am, in my makeup. But when I got married, I said to my husband, I want this wedding to be a party and a half, like a really gorgeous dinner party. Like we throw a house party, but everyone's dressed to the nines. And I said, but I will not have our wedding where the Nadlin side and his side do not interact. So what I did was I created a book, a directory, if you will, and it was categorized by the table number. So table 1, table 2, table 3. We knew where our guests were going to be seated, obviously. And I created a bio, a short 2-sentence, 3-sentence bio on every single guest at our wedding. There's over 200 people. And then I sat with my future mother-in-law, Italian from Southern Italy, and asked her to explain to me a little bit about every single one of the guests from their side. And what I was looking for was commonalities, and to be able to share with everybody why you were the ones that were invited to the wedding, like what you mean to us. I wanted everybody to realize what they meant to us, but I wanted the people seated at the next table or at the very same table to see who they were seated with. And so, we put this book together. It was stunning. We had 3 or 4 at every table, and people were crossing the room to get to table 10, for example, from table 2, because they realized that a person at that table had lived in, a Latin American country for years and spoke Spanish. Well, I knew that because I had 4 guests. I knew that was something important to put in it because 4 of my guests had flown in from Costa Rica. And so I intentionally made that little snippet of info available because they could comfortably meet another guest that they didn't know, but they knew could speak Spanish and they could have a conversation. Well, my wedding was a huge success to this day. Many years later, I get compliments and, asked, can you do another one? And the book,
the same person.
we had to, people were coming and complaining because they'd say someone took my book, because we hadn't printed enough. I didn't put one on for every person. Yeah. I had like 4 per table, right? Yeah. So all this sort of backstory to say, that's how I envision a Mintro, is we're going to make friend suggestions because we know a little bit. We know a bit about you, and we think you're wonderful. And we thank you for joining us and being open and admitting you're open to making new friends, to meeting people, to getting out and doing things. And so, that I guess goes to the vision again of a Mintro, but also the solution that we present and why it exists.
That's excellent. I think It would be a real riot if Paul, you and me do dinner parties because we are exactly the same kind of people. So it's going to be wild. It's a riot. I made a face. So for me, the story resonated because I'm a newcomer to Canada. And so, like, I didn't know a single human being when I landed on the airport. I just had my passport and my visa and my PR card. That's it. And all I did was and to the comment that nobody goes out intentionally to make friends, I actually did. I'm like, okay, I'm going to talk to 10 people, maybe one of them I will talk more. So I would on purpose say, sometimes it was the numbers, but sometimes it's coincidence. Like Paul is one of those. Like, I went for a party, I ran into him 9 times. We just went for one Harvard alumni party, Harvard Toronto, because we both went to Harvard. And I ran into Paul 9 times. Both of us, I was new in Toronto, and Paul was just moved to Burlington then. So we both had our own social isolation in a different way. He was in a new phase of his life, I was in mine, and we then had a coffee. I went to Hamilton, and then I moved to where he worked 30 years. I moved to University of Ottawa. I just moved to Ottawa actually, and then I got hired there and I started working there. And then over years we became co-founders. So we are a living testament to what you just said. Like, I value friendship more than any relationship. Yes, blood is thicker than water, but there's only so much blood you need in life. Okay, if
Yes.
you need air more,
Yes.
friendship is the air of life. You may have all the blood you want, but if you don't have the air to breathe, it's not going to make sense. And for
I
me,
like that.
today where I am, I didn't have any blood in Canada, right? My blood is in India, and I didn't know anybody. To have a company to do a PhD, it takes a lot to make a network. So, and I also lived a lot by myself in many geographies as a management consultant. So when the pandemic lockdown happened, it was literally like you said, like using one incident in your life. I'm like, I want to do this, but it was not social isolation. I was managing my isolation. And that led to, okay, I can podcast. Oh yeah, let's exercise. And that led to people coming in on this mission. And now it's officially a company where we really have strategic stuff when we do things with an idea. But it resonates a lot with what Paul also talks about, right? Paul, just say hi, or just strike up a conversation. And he's done a lot of his research work doing that. He told me many stories about that too. Right. So that's wonderful. So Paul, do you want to ask the next question?
Well, yes. So what advice would you have for a new company like ours?
Do your homework. Really understand your purpose, what your mission is. Be very crystal clear about that. Be prepared, because it's a lot of work. It is not for the faint at heart. And I think you have to absolutely be very passionate, very driven about your mission and about why you started the company. Because without that, it's very easy to just quit, because it is challenging.
Yeah.
But when it takes off, it's probably one of the most fulfilling things I've experienced, and I've experienced quite a bit of successes and wonderful moments in my life. But the fulfillment is just incredible.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if people want to know where to download and how to download the intro or find more about you guys, what are the coordinates?
So the website is amintro.com, and I'll spell it. It's AMINTRO.com. It can also be downloaded from Google Play and the App Store. And, they can reach us through, I'll give an email as well, info@amintro.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlene. This was such a lovely conversation.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.